Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Oh, what's up you guys? I'm not amazing, I'm just mediocre, and I must admit, I was not expecting the level of brutality we got to see in this Kill Code finale trailer. However, as epic as this escape scene was, I'm left with more questions than answers. With Silva slain, who is going to step forward to control the Syndicate, and what does that mean for the Apex games? Is Revenant going to step forward and fill the power vacuum with his army of clones? Or will this corner of the galaxy erupt into civil war once again? We'll be attempting to answer those questions in this video, but first, let's recap exactly what has happened during this Kill Code miniseries. The Kill Code premiere sees Lifeline teaming up with Maggie and Loba in order to find any information they might use to expose some of Duardo's more nefarious dealings to the public of the Outlands. Tracking down a lead to the planet Salvo, they find out that Duardo Silva has been raiding the bunkers where all of Revenant's bodies have been stored. With a little hacking assistance from Crypto, they discover Hammond Robotics has actually teamed up with Silva Pharmaceuticals in order to reprogram Revenant from his now psychopathic murderous tendencies back into his controllable assassin persona, along with installing some much needed upgrades to his robotic chassis. As a result of this process, Revenant begins to experience serious malfunctions that he cannot understand. Sometimes his limbs would malfunction, and other times he'd get peeks through eyes that were not his own. Catching glimpses of both the inside of the Hammond labs as well as the Legends doing their investigation. And in a desperate move to regain control over his own destiny, Revenant seeks out the help of the Legends. Revenant guides the team to the secure Hammond facility where his source code is stored, his still surviving head. And a massive battle ensues as the Legends are assaulted by a myriad of robots, including some classic Titanfall enemy types like the frag drones and one very imposing Reaper. Unfortunately, Loba finds herself consumed by feelings of vengeance she once thought buried and attempts to steal the source code for herself. Taking advantage of the confusion, Duardo Silva swipes the source code out from under the noses of the Legends and Hammond Robotics, having his own plans for Revenant. With all of their leads fizzled out and seeing no other way to get directly to Silva, Lifeline tricks Octane into taking a tracking device as a gift, a memory of their former friendship. Soon enough, they discover where the source code is kept and launch an assault on the facility, although Duardo does not appear to put up much of a fight. In fact, handing the source code directly over to Revenant. He tosses the head to Loba, who's now quashed her need for vengeance and attempts to destroy it. But while she's trying to break through the very apparently dense protective glass, Duardo makes Revenant an offer he can't refuse. As Revenant stands in the chamber, more of the upgrades that Duardo had planted begin to activate, linking him to all the other chassis within inside that facility. And Duardo presents him with a simple choice. You can let yourself die like you've been dreaming about for centuries, or stay alive and harness all the power I'm granting you. Revenant embraces this gift, and Duardo declares that together they'll finally have everything they've ever wanted, control over everything. But all Revenant wanted was control over himself. So he chooses to get rid of the middleman and kills Silva right in front of Octane, brutally tearing apart his body. The Legends all flee in terror, just barely managing to escape the swarm of duplicated Revenants that he now had control over. And we are left with one final image of Revenant's eyes turning from yellow to red. So here we are now, after all of this, left wondering what the heck just happened and what is going to happen next. Recall that Duardo Silva had gotten himself elected the sole ruler of the Outlands, replacing the Syndicate, and has built up a media and military empire to ensure that leadership continues. Now, those people have no one to answer to. So these organizations are likely going to be scrambling to figure out how to solve this crisis, while others are going to look to step in and fill this vacuum of power. And that's not even mentioning the Revenant army that is going to begin spreading across the Outlands. Honestly, this whole sequence of events gives perfect context for the Shadowfall realm, an alternate dimension ruled by a tyrannical Revenant who hosts a terrible version of the Apex games for his own amusement. And according to official Apex lore, this realm is where all of our Halloween limited time game modes take place. Of course, this also corroborates the rumors that we'll be getting a rehash of that original Shadowfall mode, reskinned to fit in with the Revenant army event. With all that on the table, I'm left wondering, what can the Legends possibly do against such an overwhelmingly brutal force? Depending on the functions of his upgrade, he might not just have an army at his command, he might be able to make an infinite number of himself, able to throw an endless wave after wave of Revenant clones to destroy any that oppose him. With the fate of the entire Outlands at stake, this one common enemy does have the potential to unite the independent planets with syndicate-governed systems for the very first time. And that might very well be Duardo's plan the entire time. To make a very long story short, the Outlands suffered through about 10 to 15 years of civil war after the IMC abandoned this area of space near the end of the Second Titan Wars. This conflict culminated in a peace treaty where a majority of planets unified under the governance of the Mercenary Syndicate, while a handful of others were allowed to remain independent while not receiving any of the benefits of Syndicate governance. Ever since then, the peace between these two halves of the Outlands has been tenuous at best, but this existential threat of the Revenant army is something that neither of them are likely able to defeat on their own, and they'll likely have to work together in order to conquer this potentially society-destroying enemy. However, beyond that rosy image of a united Outlands, there is still one big lingering thing that I do not understand. Has to do with Duardo Silva, who, as a reminder, is not actually Duardo Silva, is Torres Silva, Octane's grandpa, taking the place of Duardo Silva, Octane's father, after he passed away of a mysterious disease in order to carry on his family's legacy. This guy is ancient, using his miracle stem drugs to prolong his life, and he has been plotting his takeover of the Outlands since before Octane blew his legs off and joined the Apex games. He secretly sponsored terrorist attacks. He summoned a viral epidemic to Olympus. He framed Maggie for crimes that he committed in order to make the Syndicate look bad so he could become the dictator of the Outlands. Once in power, he manipulated everyone around him to get what he wanted, taking Lifeline's humanitarian aid organization and transforming it into his own personal military corporation, using his media empire to manipulate Seer into allowing an Apex Games arena to be installed on the dying, exploded moon of his home planet. Not to mention that it's heavily implied he was the driving force behind the Revenant Rebirth project in the first place. So I just honestly have a really hard time believing that this guy, the Moriarty of the Outlands, would let himself just get stabbed in the back like that without having any sort of contingency plan in place to handle that kind of situation. And if you allow me to dive into a little bit of speculation, I believe that getting killed was actually part of the plan in the first place. I predicted 4 months ago in my original video explaining the story of Kill Code that Duardo Silva was likely planning to build an army of Revenants that he could control, and I still believe that's the case. Rewind to a little bit earlier in Season 17, just before Kill Code Part 1 was released. We see Duardo Silva sitting down to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Ballistic, and in this conversation he vaguely mentions some looming threat that's coming to destroy the Outlands, further claiming that people will call him ruthless for what he believes he has to do to protect them from this danger. And unless I'm mistaken, I would have to say that unleashing an army of robot assassins upon the Outlands definitely counts as ruthless. And that's not even mentioning Duardo clearly alluded to having further plans when he says to Revenant, this is just phase 1 of your upgrades. We didn't even get to hear what phase 2 is going to be, let alone if there's any phases beyond that, but knowing Duardo Silva, he did have a backup plan in case he got killed by this notably vengeful robot. And if getting killed was part of the plan, like I've already suggested, then I believe two things are at play here. Number one, Silva has already uploaded his consciousness to some sort of external mainframe or server that's not even remotely accessible by anybody else. And number two, he is actually going to use that supercomputer to take control of this Revenant army. Maybe not straight away, likely giving Revenant time to taste that freedom, enjoy himself, and spread across the Outlands in a brutal conquest, until after everything is done, he can press the button and initiate a backup program that will install him as the new dictator in charge. Only then, with complete control of a vast army spread across the entirety of the Outlands, will he finally be able to keep the people safe from this mysterious threat that he has not yet revealed. Or maybe he just let his ego get the better of him and he is forever dead and will never ever find out what that mysterious threat he was talking about is. That's just as likely as anything else considering the different story threads we haven't seen followed up on in Apex Legends. And then even further, what's going to be the main plot point after this? We have a bunch of other characters whose stories haven't been touched in many a season. You've got Pathfinder's search for his missing child. You've got Ash's feud with Watson. Horizon's time travel research so she can see her son again. You've got Newcastle's hometown overrun with IMC Mafia that he has to pay dividends to. You've got Vantage's mom locked up in prison, and we still have no idea what she did to get locked up in the first place. It's been over a year since Wraith was recognized as her IMC scientist persona, an identity she cannot remember and is desperately trying to find any more information about. Any and all of these plot threads could serve as rich soil to grow a fresh narrative out of. Who do you think is going to be next to be the center of the Apex Legends stage? Let me know what you think is coming to the future of Apex, as well as your general thoughts on this whole kill code experience down in the comments section below. And if you're still confused as to how we got here in the first place, you might want to go check out this video you see on your screen right now, breaking down the entire history leading up to Revenant Reborn. I hope to see you guys there. In the meantime, I'm not amazing, I'm just mediocre, and I'm out.